Hello there, Ray here, and a brand new snapshot came out. This is pre-release 5. Now they did say they're trying to go for the full release on the 23rd of this month, and they weren't sure if they were going to come out with a 5th pre-release, but it looks like they have, and they went ahead in this one, they have fixed a couple different things. Today I'll be going over the changes with the pre-release and testing some stuff to do with them. So the first change that they made in this pre-release 5 is that they've optimized the nether portals. They will now keep the other side loaded for 15 seconds after entity goes through it. And this is something I discovered way back in 1.8 and 1.9, and I did some videos showing how you could load the end dimension as well as the nether using items. I'm actually in my old world here where we did a bunch of testing to see how the game would move entities through these dimensions and how it was loading different parts, and that's why I got all these commands going on. And we'll do some more testing later on. And they also fixed some other bugs in this version. One of the bugs was that the light level for client and server sides were not being correct. So like on the client side, it would say that it's daytime and there's light coming down so no mobs should be spawning. But then on the server, it was saying that it was dark. And this was essentially causing mobs to be able to spawn when it was daylight outside for the server. So it's a good thing they fixed that because there were just hostile mobs spawning all over the place when you build like platforms up in the air. They fixed a problem to do with block entities that were being ticked incorrectly. That is kind of a major problem in Minecraft. There's a lot of things that will be ticking, and if they constantly tick, then it could cause a lot of lag issues. And we were definitely seeing that in early versions of the snapshot with villagers and their workbenches ticking. And that was causing a lot of lag. And then they said they also updated the game credits, probably include some other people's names that have been working on the project. The nether portal optimization is a really big change. So back then when I showed how you could do this, it really opened the door to a lot of crazy stuff that we can do in vanilla survival, like able to chunk load the end dimension, and I was able to make like a beacon in the box where I could actually run several farms over many dimensions. This allowed me to automatically produce all the different parts needed to make a beacon. And we also did this in stuff like the shulker shell shulker, which goes over all 3 dimensions. But if you guys seen my 1.13 video about things that no longer work in 1.13 but used to work in 1.12, this is one of the things that they have removed, is the way that entities will load the other dimension. So like 1.13, you can throw entities through and they will briefly load the other side for a very short period of time, when before it used to be 15 seconds. So now that they have reverted it back to 15 seconds, let's see if we can do all the same stuff that we used to do in the past. So I'm here in my old testing world. This is where I test out the different dimensions and how we chunk load them. This is actually the one where I was showing how you could throw entities in another portal prior to even the 1.9 changes, where you have to throw an entity every game tick to load the other side properly. So this is spawn chunks, and if you guys are curious about this world, I will put it down in the description. It's the same one I used in my first videos. And I made these little devices. They'll check the chunks to see if they're entity processing or if they're redstone processing, also known as lazy processing. So entity is just by pushing this armor stand up into this pressure plate, which activates this command block. And anything that has a capital words means that's entity processing, and stuff that has the lowercase words is just normal redstone processing or lazy processing. And then the chunks that are blue here, normally entity processing for spawn chunks, and these ones out here are red, are normally the redstone ones. And I got some detectors out here, also got some detectors outside of it as well. Now in the past, it was kind of strange when you throw items through, it actually loaded like a 20 by 20 area around the portal. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Here we over in spawn, and let's just hop in and see what it looks like when there is no chunk loading going at spawn. So once you go through to the nether dimension, you can see we got some new detectors on this side which are making some different messages, but you can also see the spawn ones are also doing their stuff as well. So spawn chunks are still loaded even though I'm here in the nether, but you'll eventually see that they will change. So now you see over here we're getting some capital ones, that means there's entity processing at spawn. But now that I've been in the nether for a while, you can see all we have is lazy processing chunks being loaded in spawn. And it's currently loading all the way out to the world spawn point number 6, which is quite far. But let's go ahead and throw an item in here and see if it acts the same way it used to do prior to them removing it in 1.13. So we'll throw an item in there. There'll be a little bit of lag. You see the item takes a little while to get processed, but you can see it has made to spawn. We're again some capital ones, so you can see world spawn point 6 is in capitalized. And then after 15 seconds, it went ahead and got removed. Let's go ahead and see where exactly that one is at. So 6 is way out here, and notice that some of these entities got stuck inside of their blocks, so we can change it so they don't happen, and we might as well go ahead and turn this one on. This one is number 7, it's a little bit farther out. And I think the slab should work a little bit better. Now this is something I didn't see happen when I used this device way back in 1.12, but yeah, you can go ahead and just hold these armor stands up like that, and then put it in a slab there. And it still acts the same way. That way they just won't have any problems occurring with these. It probably had to do with the chunks unloading out here at spawn, and then the pistons were still moving and then they clipped inside. A lot of people would say that spawn chunks would unload completely when the player is in single player and goes over into a different dimension. And that's untrue. They actually stay loaded, but just as lazy processing. You can see after 15 seconds of us being in this dimension, all the capital words, so all the entity processing chunks have stopped, but you can still see that we are getting the lazy processing. Let's see how far the spawn chunks are actually in 1.14. If you guys remember that video that I did about my bamboo farm, I showed how inside of spawn chunks it was actually being random ticked, meaning that stuff like bamboo could grow up and then you could automatically harvest it even when no players are online and put it into your furnaces and have it get cooked up for a fuel source. So you can cook stuff like cactuses and get XP farm out of that as well. Really cool video that I did on that. So that's something we could also test. Let's go ahead and see after 15 seconds if we lose all the different entity processing chunks that we have currently going on. Now right away you can already see that some of the really far out ones like 9, 10, 11 aren't showing up on here. But you can see we just switched from entity processing, the capital ones, all the way down to lowercase ones, which are just lazy processing. So it seems that they're going all the way out to the number 8.1. They're not going any farther. So just to make sure my render distance isn't affecting it, what we can do is go over into the nether dimension and then we can relog. This will kind of unload everything and then we can kind of see everything start back up again. The world's back up. You can see they start doing their thing. We got a couple entity processing ones. As soon as you load the world, it's going to make spawn chunks entity processing. It looks like we went all the way far out is 9. Here's world spawn point 9. This looks like it's actually loading a little bit farther than what we've seen before. And now I switched from entity back to lazy processing. And it is going as far as 9. So it's actually going a little farther than if I was flying over it then coming here. And probably do something with me loading the chunks. That'd be 12 chunks each direction. So that'd be 24 by 24. And it'll just consistently stay like that. And let's go ahead and throw an entity in here and see how far it goes out and affects it. If it affects the entire area. It used to load like a 20 by 20 area. If you want to check out the previous video, you can on the exact details. So yeah, the highest one I see as capital is 7. So let's go exactly see where 7 is at, as well as 9. Let's mark these guys out. So there's 8. We actually went farther. We went to 9 last time when we reloaded the world. So I went out this far. And 7 is right here. And that I was actually loaded when I threw an item in there. So it loads a pretty decent sized area around it. And that does seem like a 20 by 20 because if that was 12 from that distance, that'd be 10 from here to the portal. So 10 on either side, that'd be a 20 by 20 area. So that's exactly the same as the testing I did way back in 1.9. So that's really cool. So if they brought back that, we're going to see a lot of consistent results from my very first discovery of this mechanic. So it's really cool that they brought this back. Let's go ahead and do some more testing. It can be a little bit iffy since we're testing in spawn chunks. So let's go ahead and test the nether as I have this set up. Not only test spawn chunks, I test the nether hub as well as a far off nether dimension and a completely isolated overworld location as well. This whole world is completely set up just for this kind of testing. So it's really cool, even though this world is a couple years old now, it's still up to date in a way as they have brought this all back again. So let's go ahead and check out this world. Nether hub, I got a bunch of detectors here as well. So I had a bunch more of these guys kind of compass the edges of it. I kind of think the edge would be right around there. I do have another testing area which we'll go look at, but let's go ahead and try this one at the nether hub. And let's hop over into overworld. And what we should see is after 15 seconds, the nether will unload. So currently you can see, it looks like the nether actually unloaded immediately after it left. Oh yeah, because it loads immediately because the player left the area. But if you throw entity in it from now, it should load it again. So let's go ahead and throw item in. And a little bit of lag spike there, trying to figure out where the item should go. Something they should definitely fix because that is really hard on servers. But you can see everything has picked up. You got a bunch of spamming from the nether hub. It looks like what we got is, scroll up. Looks like nether hub 2 might be the farthest it ever got. And then after 15 seconds, it unloads, which isn't a very long time. This is how it used to be back when I first discovered this. And we just threw another item in, and you can see the lag spike again. As long as you throw an item in every 15 seconds, there shouldn't be a lag spike. But because I waited until it completely unloaded, you can see there was. And high as I see it goes is another head number 2 will be entity processing. It doesn't go out very far. It's not like the overworld where it went out really far. But you can see it went back to being unloaded again. And I'll just show you the difference. Right there you see the lag spike. So if I, instead of waiting for it to unload, if I constantly throw items in it every 15 seconds, it'd be just like the shulker shell checker. We can keep that portal always remembered by the game. So I'll just throw another item in there and it will keep it loaded. So the idea is to constantly put items in there, and I did make a device so you can constantly recycle items and keep it loaded without having to worry about it unloading. I'll link those videos down in the description. So let's take a look at what exactly happened here. We got the very first chunk where the portal is being entity as well as lazy processing, the same as the next chunk. But then beyond that, the third chunk away, we are just getting as lazy processing. And this kind of makes sense because the way the game works that along the outside edge, if there's a 5x5 area, the very outside edge is going to be lazy processing. And then inside of that, it's going to be entity processing. So this chunk's entity, and this one's being lazy processing. So what we expect to see is a 5x5 area around this chunk that is being entity processing. So we actually got a little bit different outcome than I was expecting, which is this guy here is actually being lazy processing, meaning that we got two chunks here that are lazy processing. This is entity, 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 and this one here is lazy. Let's go ahead and make another device over here. Maybe it's actually a little bigger than what we anticipated. So chunk 0 as well as 1 were entity. On this side, we had 3 chunks of lazy. All 3 of these were lazy. And on this side, we had 2 chunks of lazy, which is kind of strange. We had 2 as well as 3 were lazy. And that doesn't seem quite right. For some reason, this side doesn't have as many entity processing as this side. They both seem to have the same amount as loaded. Looks like there's 3 chunks in either side. It most likely has to do with when the item goes through the area that it has to load to search for this nether portal, so it knows where to put it. And because of that, it has to load a certain amount of area to check for that. So as I'm going in the opposite direction, so we got kind of a idea of how far out it is loading. And we're also very close to 0, 0. Which can kind of cause some strange stuff to occur, because what it does is it takes the overworld chunks and it takes those coordinates and then it applies them to the nether, and then after it does that, then it divides them by 8. So it kind of has to load 2 different areas when it sends stuff to the nether. There definitely seems to be something strange going on, as the red ones are lazy processing, so we got 3 there. These blue ones are entity, so we got entity right here, these 4 in a row, and this one over here. But you see right here, this one's lazy. You kind of expect that to be a square. So most likely has to do, like I said, with the item and how it searches, and then it loads these chunks looking for where to put the item. We'll definitely have to do some more testing in this area here, but there is more to this world. Essentially, I first made this world because Impulse actually asked if it's possible to send entities through another dimension. So he's wondering if you could like send a minecart out to like a farm and collect items and then have the minecart chest come back and unload them. And that's why I designed this whole world up, showing him that it was possible. And what we got here is another portal and a minecart track. And then what I had is a bunch of chunk loading going up here. This was using the hopper chunk loaders to load all the way over to another location. And then from there, the minecart would go and pick up some items, and then it would come back and unload them. And then it comes over to this area here, which has some more chunk loading and devices to test everything as well. And then the minecart would go through this portal here, and then this would be the area where you would load the minecart up and then send it back. But you can see that when I'm standing here, these chunk loaders are all called OW, which stands for overworld. So out here at this far location, you can actually see that spawn is still being loaded, and it's being loaded as entity processing chunks once again. So you can still put stuff in your spawn chunks, and then it will be able to be entity processing. So stuff like iron farms can be put there, as well as like chicken farms. The chickens themselves are entities, and they will produce eggs while being entity processing chunks, and then you can take those eggs and turn around and make more baby chickens and make like a cooked chicken farm without anyone having to be online. Let's go ahead and jump into this nether portal and then throw items through and see if it's as consistent as we've seen over at spawn chunks. So once we do the area, completely unloads. Oh wow, so it seems we don't got a very big area that's being loaded. Let's go turn some more on. It's definitely not going as far out as the 20 by 20 as it used to. There we go. The devices definitely show that there is a lot of life going on over on the other side. So the highest number I see here is 5. The highest entity processing one looks like 4. Now the hopper chunk loading that I have here shouldn't make any difference anymore because they changed the way hoppers load chunks. They now try to load them before they get unloaded. So in the past, they would actually unload the chunk and then the hopper would reload it afterwards. So they change it. So I wouldn't think it would affect it, but let's just make sure that it's not actually affecting it. Now there you can see how the Number 4 showed up as entity processing, and that's just because the device went off right as we left the area, so it just loaded for a brief moment, and the command can actually go off, but the entity itself doesn't. So it's something you have to watch out when you're doing this test. Some of the beginning results can be a little bit off, so make sure you throw another item in. But you can see that we're going up to entity processing on number 3, and we're going up to lazy processing on number 5. So this one here is lazy processing, and this one is also lazy processing. These are -1 and -2. So even though they're right beside the portal, they're not necessarily loaded. So yeah, we're definitely seeing some inconsistencies. And on this side, we are seeing 2 lazy processing chunks there. We got 3 entity in the center and 2 lazy processing there. So maybe somehow it sees this one as being the center chunk. And something that has changed when you kill yourself in the world, if you leave the screen up, it used to be able that you load the chunks around you, so you could actually die and keep stuff loaded around you. And this was kind of a problem in some circumstances, as your items would also stay loaded, and therefore they would despawn. And actually, you used this in the past when we did our Halloween event. Actually, put a count off to a mob spawner, and it died by mob spawner. It could still turn mob spawners on while being dead. But they did change this, so now you can see the chunks are all unloaded. And over here, where it's supposed to say overworld, now it just says world spawn point. And notice how the player isn't technically in the world in this dimension, as instead of entity processing chunks at world spawn point, we're just getting lazy processing chunks. But you can see as soon as I hit respawn, this changes. I'm back here, so now we get some more entity processing. I'm really glad that they brought back this chunk loading. That means you can go ahead and throw items into another portal, and that will load this world as well as another dimension. And you can do the same thing for the end dimension. You can throw items into there and do exactly the same thing as that video where I showed how you can load the end dimension without a player. So it's really cool. As a technical player, I'm really glad they brought back this crazy discovery that I made several years back, and now we can use this exactly the same way as we did. The only main difference is that chunk loading out from this is much difficult because you can't just put hopper chunk loaders, as they no longer work. But you can cycle items through the portals, keeping this area loaded as well as the other dimension. And then when you do load the nether dimension over here as entity processing, you can actually work off of this by going out and loading more areas. So like if this portal would load this here as entity processing chunk, and we know it loaded this blue one here as entity processing, I can put another portal here and throw items through, and since it's in the nether, it is times 8, so therefore I went out 8 times as far in the overworld and loaded a new area. So you can see how we can use this as a way to permanently keep places loaded by having a central hub like this. We did a lot of cool testing today and learned a lot about the changes that they made. And for the most part, it seems to be pretty much the same as what I showed way back in 1.9. But we will definitely be doing more testing with this so we can see if we can get different bases loaded from a central zone like this. And don't forget guys, tonight will be the live stream where we test out new things that we're designing for 1.14. I got a lot of cool stuff planned out to work on tonight. And we are doing it with the viewers, so if you guys come and join the stream, you guys can also jump onto the server. And that will be 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you guys did find this video interesting, show it with a like and share it with somebody. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. I'd love to hear what you guys think about these changes and what other crazy stuff do you think I should test with this. And I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!